66.
Our May the 4th giveaway is still going on. Stay tuned to the end of the video to figure out how you can be selected as one of our winners, chosen to receive your very own Kyberlight package. Before we get into today's topic, I want to take a minute to thank our sponsor, Manscaped. So if you guys have been watching my channel for any amount of time, you know that I have been using the Manscaped 3.0 as my go-to lawnmower. And things just got even better with their brand new 4.0. I was super excited to be one of the first people chosen to mow their lawn with the new Manscaped 4.0 lawnmower. All I can say is the 4.0 is wicked cool. The design kind of reminds me of that random speeder 3PO hides behind in A New Hope. Also, it has wireless charging now, which officially makes it my first lawnmower with wireless charging. And because it uses electromagnetic induction to charge, it has no charging ports or plugs or anything like that, making it even more waterproof than the 3.0. This is supreme because sometimes I like to mow the lawn while it's raining. I know some people will disagree with me, but I think it's just cleaner when the rain is able to wash away all the stray blades of grass, and I just don't have to worry about that. It also has a new travel lock feature as well as a more versatile status light that lets you know how your battery is doing. Honestly, that's a great feature because with a 90-minute battery life, I can often forget to charge this thing. Click my link in the description and use the promo code LORE20 so that you can get 20% off and free shipping on your perfect package 4.0. The Lawnmower by Manscaped. The grass is greener when it's shorter. The season premiere of The Bad Batch started off with a bang, showing us Kanan Jarrus, or as he was then known, Caleb Dume, and his master Depa Billaba undergoing Order 66. However, this was not the first time we had been shown Kanan Jarrus and Depa Billaba undergoing Order 66, which immediately alerted fans of the comics that there were several key differences between the scene that we got to see in The Bad Batch and the one that we had already been told happened in the Kanan Jarrus comic. These contradictions and inconsistencies seem to be coming with increasing frequency lately. For example, in the last season of the Clone Wars, we got to see Ahsoka undergoing Order 66 as well as her duel with Maul, both of which were very different than the events that were described in the Ahsoka novel. But this time, however, Pablo Hidalgo has actually come out to give some sort of explanation for how these two scenes can be different. So today I want to take a look at this Order 66 scene in both of its appearances to figure out what's different and what Pablo Hidalgo, the guy in charge of canon at Lucasfilm, has to say for himself. So the first thing that is obviously different between the two Order 66 scenes is actually the clones themselves. The clones that we see in The Bad Batch mostly have white armor except for the commander, who has some green markings. However, in the series, they were a completely new division with a unique style of red painting on their armor. I'm not entirely sure why this change was made, other than the fact that obviously it would be easier to have most of them as white, but also I'm starting to suspect that they were wanting most of the clones to have white armor during the Order 66 scene, since that is starting to foreshadow the loss of their identity and their transformation into stormtroopers. However, it's still just an odd choice, if you were to ask me. It doesn't really impact the story. It almost just feels like straight up laziness. The next big difference is the actual moment that Order 66 is executed. In the Bad Batch show, this happens while Kanan is running alongside the Bad Batch directly after a mission, and they're about to start a new mission, whereas in the Kanan Jarrus comic, the scene takes place while they're lying down at the end of the day, sitting in front of a fire. This is directly after Depa Billaba gave her holocron to Kanan. Of course, another interesting thing that happens there is that in the comic, Kanan doesn't run right away, but actually stands there not doing anything for a while, and then actually decides to help Depa Billaba fight off the clones, before eventually listening to Depa Billaba and running. Speaking of the order to run, that's actually another thing that sort of changed between the two. The story had to maintain what Kanan Jarrus had said to the Grand Inquisitor, that the last thing Depa Billaba had ever said to him was run.
It was your Master Billaba who laid down her life for yours. Do you remember her last word to you? Her last and final breath? Run.
Of course, both Rebels and The Bad Batch kind of make this a very clear and obvious sacrifice, whereas in the comic book, that's not actually the last thing that she said to him, with the last thing being, "I'll be right behind you." I think that particular change does work better with the story they were telling in The Bad Batch, especially giving us that heroic sacrifice that would go on to haunt Kanan Jarrus for the next 20 years. Of course, the inclusion of the line that she would be right behind him does give us the opportunity to look into Kanan's head, where he tells us that he knew that Depa Billaba was lying to him, and he ran anyway, which is a catalyst to give him a nice amount of guilt that he has to deal with. Personally, I think the one we saw in The Bad Batch had more emotional impact, but that is subject to opinion. But if nothing else, I simply like it because the last thing she says to him is, "Run." It seems really that the only similarity between the two is that they both took place on the planet Collar, which is not a lot, other than the fact that some of the stances between Depa Billaba defending herself against the clones in the comic are reflected in the show. That really could just come down to the fact that she favored Form 3, and that's what Form 3 looks like when it's deflecting blaster bolts. But really, there is no mention of the Bad Batch at all, and on top of that, his death isn't faked, so the clones continue to look for Kanan, which forces him to book passage off the planet so that he can escape from the clones. What's interesting, though, is that Pablo Hidalgo actually came out and said pretty much, yeah, the only similarity is that they're both on Collar, and that's all that matters.
The arrogance.
Oh, and this reminds me, they also switched her lightsaber color from green to blue. Which, like, why? Alright, anyway, let's get into this. Let's see what Pablo Hidalgo has to say for himself. So in response, this is what he said on Twitter. If you want, one way to square the circle is the history textbook version of events. Person X and Person Y were on planet B when A occurred. In other words, that's all Pablo Hidalgo thinks matters. The name of the people and the location they're on. Not the story. An event occurred, in other words, Order 66, so where were X and Y? Collar? Great. Green light, doesn't matter what you do on that planet. He refers to the actual storytelling as a fictional expression. A fictional expression of it is potentially dramatized and embellished for its medium. In other words, Star Wars is a history book, and all of the stories are just dramatizations of that history event. Which, I gotta say, is a really, really clever way of getting out of this. I think that it shows that he's at least put enough thought through, that he knows that, yeah, we've got contradictions on our hands, and it's not a good time, but how do we get out of it? Well, Star Wars is a history textbook, and everything is just a dramatization of that, which is especially frustrating. And this article here on thedirect.com also says something I've been saying for a while. In this sense, it seems that Lucasfilm is shooting itself in the foot, as one of the major selling points for the new canon was that no such inconsistencies would exist as had been so prominent in Legends material. If you don't remember, back before Disney took over, Star Wars Legends, which at the time was just Star Wars, was filled with lots of contradictions and stories that were fundamentally incompatible with each other. One of the things Disney wanted to do was clean up the canon so that all of the stories could fit together for a cohesive narrative. But when we have things that are starting to contradict each other, that becomes a real challenge. Isn't directly incompatible with the one we saw in the comic, with a couple exceptions, notably the presence of the Bad Batch. However, this does belie a greater issue, and one that makes my job especially hard when it is literally my job to sift through the lore and find the story's common threads and, to keep track of the events as they happen. And so when you are telling the story one way and then you decide to change it and tell the story a completely different way, it then becomes up to me to decide which one of those was the one that actually happened. And in a way, it kind of is up to the fans to decide which of these events is the one that would exist in your headcanon. And I want to know that in the comments below. Is it the telling of the events from the graphic novel or the comic series? Or is it the telling of the events that we saw in The Bad Batch? Let me know your thoughts down in the comments below, because as always, I want to know what my friends have to say about our favorite galaxy far, far away. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you enjoyed the video, or if you learned absolutely nothing new, you can feel free to leave a thumbs down completely guilt-free, because that tells me I'm not doing my job. Don't forget to enter our massive May the 4th giveaway. All you have to do is let me know in the comments of this or any other video posted in May the name of the character who holds your favorite lightsaber. I'll be selecting a winner at the end of the month. Actually, I'll be selecting a few winners at the end of the month. So you will have a couple chances to win, and you may enter once per video. Please, no more than once per video, but you can leave that comment on any video I post during the month of May. Thank you all so much for watching, and as always, may the lore be with you, now and forever.